The man who begs for attention has already lost before he even opens his mouth. He's lost because he handed over his internal compass to anyone who knows how to weaponize presence, silence, and breadcrumbs with a hint of malice. He lost because he turned being noticed into a survival need. And need always has a scent. It smells like haste. It smells like anxiety. It smells like that cringe-worthy effort of someone trying to look important just so they don't have to face the void they feel when no one is looking. This is the part nobody wants to hear. Most people don't want a connection. They want an audience. They want confirmation. They want that quick hit of dopamine from existing in someone else's gaze. But here's the problem. The man who discovers he doesn't need to beg for attention changes his weight. He becomes harder to buy, harder to rush, and harder to break with calculated absence. And that's terrifying, not because he turned cruel, but because he left the scarcity market of the needy. But listen closely. Freedom without character turns into poison at an impressive speed. This isn't a manual for some cold poser to play the game of silent superiority. This is a warning for the man who is sick and tired of selling himself short. Picture the scene before he was everywhere, over-commenting, over-texting. He'd catch the slightest shift in the vibe and rush in to fill the space, fix the mood, reignite the interest, and make sure he stayed on the radar. A full-time intern in his own humiliation. Now, cut to after the shift. The interest cools down. The reply takes a while. The environment gets ambiguous. And what does he do? Absolutely nothing desperate. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't force his presence. He doesn't launch a campaign to be remembered. He stays whole. And that's when the atmosphere shifts. Because almost everyone knows how to handle a man who begs for attention. That's easy. You give a scrap. You take a scrap. You measure the reaction. And you lead him at the pace of his own hunger. The hard part is dealing with a man who doesn't need to be noticed to maintain his own value. This man doesn't compete for the storefront. He doesn't trade his peace for visibility. He doesn't rush to fill the silence. And when someone realizes they can no longer control your energy through the old trick of scarcity, the discomfort begins. The man who doesn't beg for attention becomes dangerous for exactly that reason. Let's have this conversation without the internet romanticism or the dark persona fantasies. The man who doesn't beg for attention becomes dangerous because he exits the most infantile circuit of the emotional life, the validation loop. He no longer needs to be seen by everyone, answered by everyone, remembered by everyone, or desired by everyone. It sounds simple. It isn't. For many, this borders on the supernatural. Because most people have been trained to confuse attention with worth. If they look, I matter. If they reply, I exist. If they want me, I'm valuable. That's where the whole circus is born. The man runs. He offers himself up. He explains himself. He adapts all to keep a spotlight on him. But when he breaks that cycle, everything changes. The tone, the rhythm, the way he enters, stays, and leaves. Look at this closely. The danger of this man isn't in controlling others. It's in the fact that he can no longer be led by a lack of attention. But this is where most men get lost. They discover their own weight and turn it into a theater performance. They become specialists in appearing inaccessible, using silence as personal marketing and confusing dignity with a pose. They don't mature. They just swap blatant neediness for refined vanity. So, this video has one very clear purpose: to show why the man who doesn't beg for attention changes the game, why it's so unsettling, and why this power, if not managed with character, will rot a man from the inside before it ever impresses an audience. The man who begs for attention doesn't enter the room. He invades it. He arrives talking too much, appearing too much, trying to be remembered before he's even earned the right to be noticed. He wants to be seen, confirmed, recognized. He wants proof of his existence in the eyes of others, and he does it in the most expensive way possible, offering up his dignity in small, frequent installments. He texts too much. He replies too fast. He laughs too hard. He agrees too easily. He explains himself too often. He's a one-man marketing department for himself. And the worst part is he still calls it interest, authenticity, or intensity. No, it has another name. Emotional scarcity masquerading as initiative. The guy isn't building a presence, he's running a campaign. Think about it. When a man begs for attention, he communicates one thing without saying a word. I need you to notice me so I can feel my own weight. And the second that message leaks out, the game is over. Because attention given out of pity, convenience, or curiosity never turns into respect. At best, it becomes a distraction. And distractions have an expiration date. They always have. This is where most lose their way. They confuse effort with value. They think persistence creates importance. They think being ever present creates a memory. It doesn't. It creates exhaustion. The man who forces his presence loses density. He becomes predictable, easy, domesticated by his own fear of falling off the radar. And anyone afraid of disappearing will accept any scrap of visibility as if it were a victory. Then there's the most humiliating detail. The man who begs for attention almost always believes he's in control because he's making things happen. What a beautiful delusion. In reality, he's just handing over the entire map of his own insecurities. He shows where it hurts, what he fears, where he'll run, and where he'll settle for less. And people who are used to measuring value by others' effort catch on to that instantly. They don't even have to be smart. They just need patience and a little bit of coldness. The point is simple. The man who begs for attention has already entered the arena defeated because he surrendered his center before any bond even existed. He isn't choosing. He's offering himself. He isn't observing. He's asking. And a man who asks too much to be seen ends up exactly how he started. Visible, maybe. Respected? Never. Nobody wakes up evolved. The shift almost always starts with shame. The shame of realizing how much you prostrated yourself just to be noticed. The shame of remembering the excessive texts, the overbearing presence, the energy handed over to people who never made a proportional effort. It hurts. Good. Some pain doesn't destroy. It just rips off the mask. He starts to notice the pattern. Every time he feels distance, he runs toward it. Every time he senses silence, he overcompensates. Every time interest cools, he goes into rescue mode, as if it were his job to save a vibe that the other person isn't even trying to sustain. An emotional firefighter for a fire that wasn't even his. It's exhausting. And from the outside, it's pathetic. Now look at this. A man doesn't get tired of the person first. He gets tired of the role. He gets tired of living as an emotional hype man, always trying to be remembered, chosen, or pulled back into the spotlight. And eventually, he realizes the ugliest truth. Attention won through persistence never turns into respect. At best, it becomes a habit. And a habit without respect is just well-dressed convenience. This is the crossroads. When that realization hits, many men try to solve it in the most childish way, by becoming a character. They stop talking, but they're still starving. They disappear, but they keep checking to see if they were missed. They strike a pose of detachment while inside they're still screaming for proof of their importance. Almost nothing has changed. They just swapped loud desperation for silent theater. Real change begins when he accepts a simple, hard truth. If I have to degrade myself to be seen, then the price is already too high. From that point on, the behavior changes before the image does. Less effort, less rush, less campaigning. And from that, a type of presence is born that doesn't ask for permission to exist. Real transformation doesn't start with aesthetics. It's not about posting less, giving short replies, or pulling a poorly rehearsed mysterious guy act. Any needy guy with an internet connection can learn that in an afternoon. The real shift happens in the reflex. Before, any drop in attention triggered an impulse. Appear, prove, remind, reignite. Not anymore. Now he feels the void and doesn't rush to fill it with his own dignity. He speaks less. Not because he's playing a character, but because he realized that half of what he said was just smoke to maintain his presence in the room. He commented to exist. He explained to avoid being forgotten. He offered himself up to stay on the radar. It was a tiring effort, almost moving if it weren't so predictable. When that dies, something else is born. Gravity. Look at this closely. The man who no longer chases the spotlight doesn't vanish from the world. He just stops campaigning. He doesn't force the timing, the topic, or the memory. He lets the silence do the work. He lets the absence reveal the truth. He lets the other person show if there is real interest without an emotional stage manager working overtime to keep the show going. This changes everything because presence without effort is worth infinitely more than presence on clearance. This is where people get confused. They mistake this shift for coldness. It's not coldness. It's the end of the begging. It's a man understanding that real value doesn't need to enter a room with sirens blaring to be noticed. And when he finally feels that in his bones, he no longer needs to fight for every inch of attention as if his life depended on it. Because it doesn't. But then, the conflict starts. The man who stops begging for visibility starts to irritate those who were used to seeing him available, anxious, and easy to pull by the cheap string of approval. He's scary because he breaks an ancient mechanism, the mechanism of control through scarcity. Many people learn to control their environment by doling out attention like currency. Give a little, take a little, measure the reaction, manage the distance, and watch who runs. It works perfectly on a starving man. It's almost automatic, but it stops working the moment he no longer needs that to feel like somebody. The man who doesn't beg for attention doesn't get into a fight over crumbs. He doesn't force a conversation just to stay relevant. He doesn't rush to reclaim the spotlight. He doesn't interpret every fluctuation as an existential threat. And that disarms people, because when you stop competing for the display case, you expose the people who were used to selling reflections as if they were actual value. It's a silent embarrassment. The good kind. The discomfort this man causes doesn't come from aggression. It comes from independence. He can no longer be jerked around by a late reply, a lukewarm vibe, or presence handed out like a prize. And those who relied on those tricks to feel superior start calling this posture cold, arrogant, or distant. It's the old trick of swapping an inability to control for a moral judgment. Here's the thing. People think this man is stuck up. Not necessarily. Often, he just stopped offering himself up as an audience for someone else's vanity. That's it. But for someone who lived for the shine of his neediness, this feels like an insult. After all, nothing irritates a control system more than someone who refuses to participate in it. There's another layer. The man who doesn't beg for attention also reveals the environment for what it is. When he stops chasing the focus, the people who only liked him while he was doing all the work start to surface. The people who confused availability with genuine interest show their faces. The people who only knew how to maintain a bond through the fear of being forgotten are exposed. His silence doesn't create the problem. It just shines a light on what was already broken. And that is exactly where the risk lies. Because feeling that gravity, noticing that effect, seeing the game fail in front of you, all of that can go to your head very fast. This is the most elegant trap. A man spends years begging for attention, chasing the light, offering himself up like someone terrified of vanishing if no one looks. Then one day, he wakes up, he stops asking, he stops forcing, he stops performing, and he feels his own weight. So far, so good. But then the problem starts. He starts liking the effect too much. He notices that when he doesn't run, the room moves. He notices his absence draws more attention than his old persistence ever did. He notices his calm produces curiosity in the very people who used to keep him trapped with crumbs. And instead of using that to become cleaner, he starts using it to feel bigger. Boom. The detachment lost its dignity and gained the scent of ego. Before, he was addicted to attention. Now, he's at risk of becoming addicted to the reaction his lack of attention causes. It looks like evolution. It often isn't. Sometimes it's just the same hunger in more expensive clothes. Before, he begged for focus. Now he manages scarcity to see who flinches. The addiction is still there. He just changed the method. The guy thinks he's matured because he's less available. But deep down, he's still serving the same altar. The altar of his own impact. He wants to be remembered, interpreted, discussed, felt. He doesn't want to be loved desperately anymore. He wants to be noticed sophisticatedly. Very noble, very deep, almost a philosopher of his own trauma. The vain man turns silence into marketing, distance into a costume, indifference into a stage. He isn't protecting his peace, he's managing an effect. And a man who overmanages his effect usually still needs the eyes of others to confirm he's worth something. He just learned how to ask for it in a less humiliating way. This is the test. Not when he stops begging for attention, but when he realizes he could use this new strength to cause dependency, anxiety, and confusion and chooses not to. Because a mature man doesn't want an audience. He wants a center. Everything else is just theater with better lighting. This is where almost every man trips up after he stops begging. He feels his weight and decides what to do with it. He can become a presence or he can become a character. They look similar from the outside. They aren't. One has an axis. The other has a script. A man with presence doesn't run a campaign, but he also doesn't perform a play. He doesn't overoffer. He doesn't force the subject. He doesn't enter the scene just to ensure he's remembered, but he also doesn't use silence as bait, or distance as a costume, or coldness as personal branding. He simply doesn't need to. That's the rarest thing, not needing to seem. The character does the opposite. He discovered that absence gets attention and decided to make a career out of it. He disappears just to measure the effect. He gives short answers to seem profound. He stays inaccessible not out of standards, but out of vanity. He's the same old needy guy, just with better art direction. Before, he begged for focus with excess. Now, he begs for importance with calculated scarcity. The trick changed. The dependency stayed. Mistaking mystery for maturity is a common trap. People mistake the discomfort they cause in others for a sign of their own value. It isn't. Often, it's just a man who is still a slave to his own image, trying to look rare because he hasn't learned how to be whole. A whole man doesn't manage perceptions 24/7. That's exhausting, and deep down, it's a giveaway. Presence is clean. A character is noisy on the inside. One doesn't beg for attention because he already has a center. The other doesn't beg for attention because he wants to look above the need while he's dying of curiosity to know if he was noticed. One lives, the other performs, and the difference shows up fast to anyone who knows how to look past the dark packaging and the serious captions. The first change is brutally simple. He stops insisting where there is no reciprocity. Before, any lukewarm signal was enough to keep him investing energy, trying to reignite interest, carrying the conversation and holding the vibe on his back as if it were his duty to keep it alive. Not anymore. Now he observes if there is movement from the other side. If there isn't, he doesn't compensate. To those who profited from his effort, this looks like coldness. It isn't. It's just the end of the free service. He also stops confusing partial attention with rare connection. He's no longer impressed by a random reply, intermittent presence, or interest that only shows up when it's convenient. He's seen this movie. He knows the ending. So, he enters fewer relationships based on fluctuation, ambiguity, and shared neediness. He enters more where there is clarity, consistency, and respect without a campaign. Less adrenaline, more structure, which to many seems boring, usually to those who have been addicted to chaos for too long. When he stops begging for attention, the relationship stops being a begging field and becomes a choice field. He no longer tries to earn space. He sees if the space exists. He doesn't fight to stay in the spotlight. He observes if there is real value in staying there. He doesn't force intimacy through frequency. He tests quality through patterns. It sounds obvious. It isn't. For a man trained to sell himself for crumbs, this is a moral overhaul, and this is where people get lost. Because many people only liked him when he was easy. Easy to call. Easy to trap. Easy to keep around with zero effort and a little bit of measured attention. When he stops functioning like that, he becomes strange, distant, or complicated. The old trick, calling the dignity he used to lack a flaw. Nothing new here, just the environment reacting to the loss of its old control. In the right relationships, this improves everything. It brings lightness. It brings respect. It brings a cleaner rhythm. He doesn't need to prove his presence all the time or live in a campaign to keep being noticed. In the wrong relationships, the effect is immediate. The bond withers. And thank God for that. Because whatever only stays alive while you're begging for attention was never a bond. It was consumption. Stopping the begging feels liberating, and it is, but it's expensive. Because the moment a man stops campaigning for presence, he loses access to a lot of things that used to look like connection. He loses the empty invitations, the lukewarm replies disguised as interest, and the constant circulation of people who only liked him as long as he was working harder than everyone else. It's an uncomfortable cleaning process, necessary, and almost always lonely at first. Some men think that by stopping the begging, they'll get immediate respect, spontaneous interest, and a natural seat at every table in exchange. What a beautiful stage of naivety. In practice, first comes the silence, then the empty space where there used to be noise, the absence of easy stimulation, the strange sensation of no longer being seen all the time. And that's when many panic. Not because they're wrong, but because they were addicted to the storefront. The price isn't just social, it's internal. When a man stops chasing the spotlight, he comes face to face with his own structure. If it's weak, the silence is heavy. If it's shallow, the lack of attention hurts. If he still depends on the outside gaze to hold himself up, he'll run back to the old role. One more comment, one more text, one more appearance, just to numb the discomfort of not being at the center of anything. Mistaking peace for being erased is the final hurdle. People confuse standards with isolation. They confuse the end of begging with a lack of value. They've been trained for so long to associate attention with existence that when life gets quieter, they think they're losing something essential. They aren't. They're just going through withdrawal. And withdrawal always tries to convince you that the addiction was necessary. The man who can pay this price levels up. He learns to exist without an audience. He learns not to fill every void with unnecessary effort. He learns not to go back to the circus just because the initial silence feels too big. That's not coldness. That's muscle. That's structure growing where there used to be hunger, but stopping the begging isn't enough. The decisive point is something else. Knowing how to carry this power without letting it rot you from the inside. This is where a man is truly measured. Not when he begs, not when he stops begging, but when he realizes he now has weight and decides what to do with it. Because it's one thing to escape the hunger for attention. It's another thing entirely to not turn that escape into a weapon of vanity. And many fail right here. They leave the breadline and walk straight onto the stage. Carrying this power without rotting requires a very unglamorous discipline. You don't chase to be seen, but you also don't disappear just to be felt. You don't force your presence, but you also don't manage your absence like you're dosing poison with a dropper. You don't over-explain, but you also don't use silence as a moral high ground. It sounds simple. To a wounded ego, it's an insult. A clean man uses his calm to protect his dignity, not to manufacture someone else's anxiety. He chooses better, enters better, leaves better. If there's no reciprocity, he moves back. No show, no games. Without that almost comical need to leave a psychological mark on everyone just to confirm he's finally learned his own value. That isn't value. That's trauma with good diction. The ego wants an audience. It wants people to miss you, notice your change, suffer your withdrawal, comment on your new posture, and interpret your silence. All very cinematic. All very useless. A mature man doesn't turn peace into a performance. He doesn't use his firmness to rip a reaction out of anyone. He just no longer negotiates the things that used to make him sell himself cheap. There's a criterion that settles everything. A dry question. Is your posture serving to preserve your center or to hit someone else's ego? If it's to hit them, you're still a prisoner. You still depend on the effect. You still need someone to feel the blow to confirm your own strength. That isn't freedom. That's dependency, wearing the clothes of self-control. In the end, carrying this power without rotting is about this. Less campaign, less seen, less need to be seen even in your absence. More standards, more sobriety, more peace without an audience. The man who has truly matured doesn't want to be the center of all attention. He just wants to never have to beg for it again. Ultimately, the man who doesn't beg for attention becomes dangerous for one simple reason. He can no longer be bought with crumbs. He doesn't run a campaign to be remembered. He doesn't offer himself up to maintain a vibe, and he doesn't degrade himself to stay in focus. That dismantles every dynamic built on the male hunger for validation. The problem was never just the lack of attention. It was how much dignity the man was willing to burn just so he wouldn't have to feel that lack. But here is the finish line. It's not enough to stop begging. Some men leave the breadline and go straight to the theater. Before, they wanted to be seen at any cost. Now, they want to be felt at any cost. Before, they humiliated themselves for presence. Now, they manage absence as if it were a work of art. They haven't matured. They've just sophisticated their neediness. A truly strong man is different. He's the one who doesn't beg for attention, but also doesn't act like he's transcended the human race. He just no longer negotiates his center for cheap visibility. If he's seen, great. If he isn't, he stays whole. That is the point that separates a posture from a character. Peace from performance. Value from propaganda. Remember this, the peak isn't being missed. The peak is not needing to prove that you are. When a man reaches that point, the auction is over. The campaign is over. The rush to be noticed is over. What's left is presence. What's left is standards. What's left is dignity. And to a world used to men begging for focus, that looks almost like a threat. Comment, my value doesn't need a PR team.